All right, guys, we are back and we're ready to read The Day the Rollets Got Their Moxie Back. And if you look at the genre that we're reading today, the genre is a historical fiction. So it's a made-up story. It's probably going to have like real names, real situations, real setting, stuff of that nature. But when it comes to historical fiction, you're going to have a lot of more, maybe like unfamiliar language, because they try to like describe unfamiliar events. But like when you see the word Moxie, it means courage or determination, particularly in times of difficulty. So we know that the first time, well, you know now, but the first time the word Moxie was like used or invented, if you will, was in the 1930s. And the essential question is, how do shared experiences help people adapt to change? So we're going to read about how a family comes together during a period of great hardship in the United States. If we look here, when we're note-taking, we're going to think about the essential question as I read and note how the Rollette family adapted to change. And then we're going to look at what details help us identify the genre. So if I look here, I see some details. Well, because it's historical fiction. The word Moxie was invented back then, and it looks like they're in pajamas, maybe a little bit from the older period of time, and they're reading a letter. And I mean, if it were like right now, we'd probably be like texting or emailing, right? So just keep thinking about how the Rollette family adapted to change. Sometimes the thing that gets you through hard times comes like a bolt from the blue. That's what my older brother's letter was like, traveling across the country from a work camp in Wyoming. It was 1937, and Ricky was helping to build facilities for a new state park as part of President Roosevelt's employment program. Though the program created jobs for young men like Ricky, it hadn't helped our dad find work yet. Let's stop really fast. We're going to highlight. I'm going to change the highlight color since they highlight our vocabulary words. And I'm going to see, so it says, let me see here. Okay. So I'm going to try and identify the genre, which we already did together, but I'm going to use details that gave us like what genre this is, the historical fiction. And one hint is that it was taken, and the setting was in 1937. Also, President Roosevelt was the president back then. So these details kind of help show what time it was, and it talks about work, and it talks about work camp and creating jobs for young men. So this shows that the story takes place during the Great Depression. Kind of our theme right now, the Great Depression is the era, like the soup kitchen that we went over the other day. Okay. I imagine Ricky looking up at a snow-capped mountains and sparkling skies, breathing in the smell of evergreens as his work crew turned trees into lumber and lumber into buildings. It almost made an 11-year-old weakling like me want to become a lumberjack. Okay, so I'm going to pause there for a second and show you, compare and contrast the two settings that are described here. So the first one is Wyoming, and if you look back right here, he describes it as snow-capped mountains, sparkling skies, breathing in the smell of evergreens. Okay, so that would probably be to describe Wyoming. And then the next place is going to be New York that we're looking at. Okay. Back in our New York City apartment, let's highlight New York City. The air smelled like meatloaf and cabbage. Air smelled like meatloaf and cabbage. Dad sat slantwise in his chair by the window, obviously trying to catch the last rays of sunlight rather than turn on a light. My older sister Ruth and I lay on the floor comparing the letters Ricky had sent us. Surely, Ricky says that they had a talent show. And he wore a grass skirt and did a hula dance while playing the ukulele, Ruth reported with delight. I bet he was the cat's pajamas. It'd be swell to have your own talent show, I replied. Should I start sewing grass skirts? Mom asked from the kitchen, which was just the corner where someone had plopped down a stove next to a sink and an icebox. Now come set the table. Dinner's almost ready. Okay. Let's go here. And we're going to compare the two settings. And Wyoming is full of snow-capped mountains and smelling of evergreens. And then he describes New York City as the apartment was dimly lit, that means not too bright, and smelling of meatloaf and cabbage. All right. We're going to finish the story and then come back to this, okay? Dad stayed where he was swollen and spent. Any jobs in the paper? Mom asked, her voice rich with sympathy. Dad shook his head no. He had worked as an artist in the theater for years, but most productions were still strapped for cash. Dad sketched posters for shows that did get the green light, just to keep his skills sharp. He even designed posters for Rollets Follies, with Ruth and me depicted in watercolor costumes. For dinner, Mom served a baked loaf of whatever ingredients she had that worked well together. From the reddish color, I could assume that she had snuck in beets. I guarantee you'll like these beets, she said, reading my frown. It's beet loaf, the meatless meatloaf, she sang as she served up slices. Ruth fidgeted in her seat, still excited about the talent show, though calm on the outside. Inside, I was all a twitter, too. Over the next week, Ruth and I practiced our Hawaiian dance routine. Our parents worried about heating bills as cold weather settled in. One Saturday, my father decided to grin and bear it and grab some hot coffee at a local soup kitchen, where he hoped to hear about available jobs. Ruth and I begged to go along. Since the kitchen offered donuts and hot chocolate on weekends, he agreed. Most everyone in line was bundled up against the cold. Many of us had to rely on 2 or 3 threadbare layers. Like many other men, Dad bowed his head as if in if in shame. The line moved slowly. Bored, Ruth began practicing her dance steps. I sang an upbeat tune to give her some music. Around us, downturned hats lifted to reveal frowns becoming smiles. Soon, folks began clapping along. Egged on by the supportive response, Ruth twirled and swayed like there was no tomorrow. Those girls sure have Moxie, someone shouted. They've got heart all right, offered another. Why, they ought to be in pictures. With performances like that, I'd nominate them for an Academy Award, a woman called out. Those are my girls, Dad declared, his head held high. Everyone burst into applause. For those short moments, the past didn't matter, and the future blossomed ahead of us like a beautiful flower. I couldn't wait to write Ricky and tell him the news. So, it says, make connections. Let's talk about ways that Ricky, Ruth, and Shirley helped each other adapt to times. Well, if you look over here, Ricky wrote home a letter because he was trying to stay in touch with them and let them know what they were doing. So he tells them, and they muster up the idea to have a talent show. Well, they don't have much better to do at their house right now during the Great Depression. So then when Dad has to go to the soup kitchen where people could find jobs and work, they tagged along. And out of their boredom, they became 2 little stars entertaining everybody. So Ricky helped his sisters by giving him the idea, and then at the end of the day, Dad was proud of Ruth and Shirley because they made the best of nothing. So if you could, on a piece of paper, just draw this picture. We've got 5 circles and they're all connected for our compare and contrast graphic organizer. And before my timer goes off, well, hopefully 2 minutes, we're gonna compare, hurry. We're gonna compare mother, up here, father, the event, which is dinner at the Rollets, Shirley, and Ruth. If you could just go through and compare and contrast these characters. So some characters may be similar or different from one another in their traits, actions, and responses to events. So when I read the dinner scene on page 326, the day, let me put 326, you can go back because it's YouTube, so you can go back and forth. On page 326, the day the Rollettes got their Moxie back, you can use text details to compare each family member. So I'll give you an example. Mother, she sings when she serves their food. She tries to make the best of things. Father, he's kind of ashamed a little bit. He shakes his head if you look at page 326. And he's very tired. It's stressful trying to feed a family when there's no work. Shirley, she's quiet, yet excited. And she's dreaming of being an actress in a show. Dreaming of a show. And last but not least, Ruth. She's excited too. And fidgety. And she's also dreaming of a show. Okay, so if you guys could go on past the story and then read all of this, and just press pause till you read it, then read this, press pause again. And if you notice, it's again the Great Depression. Another something about the Great Depression. And then go ahead and on a line paper you would number 1 through 4. You don't need to do B because we're not together with our partners. And then you can stop there. Okay, we'll do this next time. All right, have a good one. Bye.